What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing something a little different. This isn't a video part of the Bitcast series. This is just going to be a video particularly talking about the coronavirus, what I think is a Black Swan event, and then just kind of take a look at some of the traditional markets, and as well as, Fed reactions, Trump's reactions, and just kind of talk out a little about everything that's going on right now, because there's a lot of information flying around and a lot of different viewpoints, and it seems that you're either part of the crowd that thinks we need to take the right precautions in quarantine and do everything we can to stop this thing, or you're part of the crowd that thinks that this is blown out of proportion. You want to compare it to the flu, and you think it's just a panic by the media, and that we don't need to be worrying about this. It seems like the crowds are basically divided into those two separate groups. I'm more into the group of, I think this thing is for real. I'm looking at the numbers, the transmission rate, the death rate, and everything, and obviously this thing is way more serious than the flu. So I'm under the belief that we do need to take the proper precautions to quarantine, because we didn't act soon enough to properly contain this virus, and now it's completely viral, and we're spreading it amongst ourselves without knowing it. This is a virus that it's based off of SARS, which is a virus that we had a few years back, where it infected a decent amount of people, but not nearly as many as the coronavirus is infecting. It's actually pretty insane, the amount faster it is. I thought I had a graphic somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Here's SARS, number of SARS cases versus corona, and you can just see that the rate of infection is exponentially greater than the last time we saw this SARS virus. Basically, coronavirus, it starts out as like a flu-like symptoms, but then it evolves into SARS, which is a severe acute respiratory illness, which basically is like pneumonia, where your lungs fill up with this bacteria, and then you need like ventilators and defibrillators to keep you going while your body fends off this virus. And the big problem with this, to me, and what we're seeing in Italy, is that if we don't react fast enough, it infects enough people to where it overwhelms our healthcare system, and we're seeing that in Italy right now. It's a very sad situation where Italian doctors are actually having to decide who's going to live and who's going to die, because so many people are infected, and their hospitals are overrun, and they don't have enough ventilators to keep all of their patients alive and going, because once the virus gets into their lungs, they need that support to while their body's fending that off, and some of them just don't have the ventilators, and they end up dying, which is very sad. I can't imagine having to make that decision. And that's what we're trying to fend off here in America. And in the way that Italy was known for being one of the European states that took this very lightly, and didn't, as soon as they saw their first cases, they didn't do everything in their power to contain it, because at the beginning it was, we didn't know a lot about it, and it's tough to take those strong precautions when you don't know that this thing is so viral and so contagious and actually so deadly compared to the flu or compared to any virus that we've seen. It's really sad to see people take it very lightly, and I think I'd rather be on the side where you can laugh at me down the road if this ends up being something that blows over, and it doesn't end up being a crazy pandemic like Italy's seeing. I'd rather be the guy that was calling for us to take the precautions than to be the guy that was saying, you know what, go out there and spend money with your local pub. They're really hurting. Don't hurt the economy because you're afraid of some viral infection that's killing more people faster than we've ever seen. Like, that's just super irresponsible to me. And if we look at what Trump has said and what Fox News is saying, they're basically two heads of the same coin. That's where everybody's getting this rhetoric where it's not as bad as the flu. I don't know why we need to be taking it as seriously, or the flu kills thousands of people every year, but we never shut down the economy, blah blah blah. Well, it's like, if you look at the death rate the flu versus coronavirus, it's not even comparable. It's exponentially more mortal. It's going to kill you a lot easier than the flu is, and that's the problem, especially when you get into the older people. I mean, look at that. Like, our grandparents have a 15% chance of dying if they contract this disease, and I don't want to see that. I've got old grandparents, and it's just super irresponsible of me, not only for Trump to say this. Literally, whenever I ask a Zoomer or somebody my parents' age, they say this exact same rhetoric that Trump said at the beginning of March. He said, so last year, 37,000 Americans died from the common flu. It averages between 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down. Life in the economy goes on. At this moment, there are 546 confirmed cases of coronavirus with 22 deaths. Think about that. Well, if we do think about that, if we do the math, 22 deaths in 546 confirmed cases is like a 4% death rate compared to the flu's death rate, which is 0.05%, 0.2%, 0.01%. It seems to be a lot. Like, if the amount of cases keeps going up, which it is, then so is the amount of deaths. And that's kind of the concern here, is why are we taking this lightly when clearly the death rate is exponentially higher than the flu? That's why we're trying to contain it so it doesn't spread. And the numbers that we're talking about are only confirmed cases, and mind you, testing is the biggest concern right now. When this thing started infecting Wuhan, China, it was back in November of last year, 2019. We didn't understand it. We didn't understand how bad it was. We continued flights from China, even directly from Wuhan, and eventually people infected the people of Seattle. And the people in Seattle is ground zero for the United States. I've actually got a buddy who's in one of our chat groups that we talk about this stuff a lot. He said he's got a buddy in Seattle that has coronavirus symptoms, and he went to the hospital to check himself in, and they said, we can't check you in unless you're in critical condition. So at ground zero, where this place started in the United States, they're already denying patients because they're overrun. They can't see you unless you're actually like physically dying. So what's that going to do for the people that can't see the treatment when they have early symptoms? Well, they could evolve into the patient that actually does need to see a doctor and has, is in critical condition. So really, we're having this reactionary response kind of like Italy does. And, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that we're about 10 days behind Italy. So the next 2 weeks are going to be, I think, mind-blowing for a lot of people. I think the people that were saying that this is all just something, small compared to the flu and this is all going to blow over, I think it's going to be a big wake-up call for them here in a couple weeks. Even with all of the quarantining, even with the national emergency and everything going on, I think, it's almost too little too late. And back to the testing, the FDA and the CDC messed up big time. They originally the CDC sent out a bunch of testing to states for the coronavirus. They ended up being faulty tests. So the test didn't work. We were testing people, and now all of a sudden we don't even know if these people for sure have it, and we're trying to keep these guys quarantined, and we didn't do a good job of that, and they spread it, and now a bunch of people have it. A bunch of people probably don't know they have it, because that's another thing with the coronavirus, is you could be a inhibitor of it and you don't even show signs until 2 weeks after you have it. But in those 2 weeks that you do have it and you're not showing signs, you are actually contagious and spreading the virus. So you are spreading the virus and you don't even know it. So that's the scary thing about this. Nothing like the flu, nothing like SARS. I mean, it's this covert virus that is seeping into our society, and we don't even know it, and we're trying to understand this thing. So that's why I think it's super important that we're taking the precautions and quarantining and getting the amount of testing kits available to people so that we can actually see the numbers, because right now the confirmed number of cases is exponentially lower than the amount of cases that are truly out there. The way that this thing is spreading, it spreads so fast. I was seeing somewhere that said if you have the coronavirus, you're likely to infect at least 2 people. So that's a terrible statistic. It just spreads so fast, faster than anything we've ever seen before. And if we look at, I had a graphic somewhere. Yeah, this is coronavirus versus SARS. I mean, it's crazy exponentially fast, the number of cases, the number of confirmed cases, the number of unknown cases. Think about what this curve would look like if we actually had viable test kits and thousands and millions of test kits where we could actually constructively test people and find out for sure if they have it. Right now, it's like we have limited number of testing. They only want to test you if you're in like critical condition or you show like signs of acute respiratory illness. It's like, well, people are trying to catch this thing before it evolves into something like that, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Like Italy, where they took it lightly in the beginning, they didn't quarantine people, and now it just spread into their elderly and their families, and now tons of people are sick and infected and need ventilators, and they don't have access to these ventilators. Doctors are overwhelmed, doctors are getting sick, we have less doctors and more patients, and it's just a recipe for disaster. And I pray that this doesn't happen here, but the way that we've reacted, I have a feeling that in the next 2 weeks is going to be a very big eye-opener for a lot of people. I hope I'm wrong, but all signs are pointing to that we really didn't react in a manner that we should have. And a lot of that is based on our misunderstanding. A lot of that is based on downplaying this, comparing it to the flu. So there's a lot of people at fault here, and it starts at the leadership at the top, downplaying this to many Americans, saying, comparing it to the flu, when actually he proved in his own tweet that the death rate is actually 4%, which is insanely high for a viral infection that is so contagious that if you have it, you're likely to infect at least 2 people. You don't even show signs that you have it, and you're spreading it everywhere. Super irresponsible to me. So, and then to add on to that irresponsible, let's take a look at what Fox News is saying this morning.
And there's a lot of concerns with the economy here because people are scared to go out. But I will just say, one of the things you can do if you're healthy, you and your family, it's a great time to just go out, go to a local restaurant.
Yeah.
Likely you can
Great time to go out to a local restaurant. Can you believe that? And
in this country that are relying.
People are putting the economy over the health of Americans, and I'm sorry, it starts from the top, like I said. If we look at the national emergency presser that Donald Trump had yesterday, I've never seen anything like this before. CBS News, not CBN, not any of like those C-SPANs where they always had the tickers on the screen, just a normal news site. They put the Dow Jones ticker on the screen while he was giving his presser. What does that tell you? That tells you that the stock market and the economy is more important than saving lives. To me, that's what this says. 100%. And if you look at the president's tweets, this is the S&P 500. When this thing was rising up to the top with all this fake liquidity and the Fed was pumping up the stocks, and all of a sudden this coronavirus hit, he said the stock market's starting to look very good to him. What happened after that? The stock market crashed insane. This is one of the most irresponsible things I think a president can do, is sit here and try to instill confidence via tweets, for people to make financial decisions, and then they just absolutely get wrecked. And then when this thing bounces after the Fed announces 1.5 trillion in easing, he says this is the biggest stock market rise in history, and he's boasting about it. Like, while we're in this like pandemic nightmare going on, it's just like, it baffles me, like, how it's plain as day that really, like, the financials and the economy are really, like, I'm not saying like those aren't like big things to consider and take into account, because savings and people's 401ks and a lot of that, it's important, but obviously these markets are super intertwined, and that's a discussion for another day. But it's very irresponsible for a president to go on Twitter, tell people the stock market's looking good, and then boast about it after it bounces from a bottom like that. That's absolutely ridiculous. Borderline criminal. So yeah, the flu doesn't even compare to the coronavirus. Every time somebody brings up the flu in comparison, I mean, they're just literally repeating Trump's rhetoric, which is very sad. In Fox News, they're obviously not helping the situation, telling people to go out in public and go to their local restaurants when this thing is spreading, and we don't even have viable testing. So it's super sad to see. Be safe. I'm not. I found this website, avatoral.org, which is this Andres guy. He's put together all this data, and it's very comprehensive. I've been following it day to day. Basically, this thing goes up about, I mean, it's been rising in the number of cases at least 20,000 per day. So it's insane. I mean, the last day it's gone up 7.5%. Last week it's gone up 50%. Nearly 50% in the last week. And if you divide the number of deaths by the number of cases, the death rate's sitting at about 3.7%. And so that's super sad to see. There's still 77,000 people that we don't know the outcome is going to be. Hopefully they survive. If we look over here, we see that Italy is just getting ravished, absolutely ravished, because they were slow to react. No testing. They took it lightly, and now their hospitals are being ravished, and it's just super sad to see. And I hope we don't see that here in America, where we have exponentially more people. You know, Italy's about the size of California, just to put things in perspective. And I wanted to talk, you know, aside from the coronavirus and everything, leading up to this Black Swan event, I think it's been super interesting to see the amount of CEOs that have been departing from big corporations, big business. It's uncanny to me. You know, one thing in finance, or if you get into markets, one thing you want to do is to look at what the rich people are doing. You know, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And when I see just like a mass exodus of CEOs from big business, like it's very alarming to me. Like they know something is coming that I don't. And we've seen that the past 3 years. We've seen more people step down from big companies than ever before. I mean, you got Pepsi, Volkswagen, Goldman Sachs, Pfizer, CBS, Fiat Chrysler, Intel, and then just the other day, Bill Gates said he's stepping down from Microsoft. So I mean, the number of CEOs that are abandoning companies seems to mount. And you know, I personally think it could be a few different reasons. It could be, you know, they're old and they just want to get out of it. They're tired of it. There's more demand for gains. You know, people are addicted to gains. They think markets should always go up, so there's more pressure on these CEOs. So that could be a reason they step down. Another reason, I believe, is because they've made so much fucking money that they're ready to just bounce. The way that the system works is that when the federal government lowers interest rates, that incentivizes companies to take out debt to buy their own stock, which our government actually encourages. They encourage companies to go out, take out debt, and buy their own stock to prop the stock up. Well, who profits when the stock goes up? Okay, you could say people that invest in the S&P 500, yada yada, or the stock personally, okay. But most of the people that hold the stock are top level executives, CEOs, board members, yada yada yada. These guys are the ones that hold the majority of the shares. So these CEOs are using debt, cheap debt, to prop up their stock, essentially propping up their own. They lever up. They know that they're about to pump their own stock, so they lever up themselves. They get filthy rich off of this scheme, which they've been doing for the past 10 years. The past 10 years, it's been shown that the majority of the gains in the stock market are from corporate buybacks, from companies taking out debt and buying their own stock. That's where all of these gains come from. And people are mad that this stuff isn't sustainable. And that's a bell I'm going to be ringing for a long time. It's not sustainable. So when I see an exodus of CEOs, I get really, really afraid for the economy. And people are boasting about oil prices going down. When oil prices go down, that is a sign that there is potential global crisis ahead. Last time gas prices were this low was the 2008 financial crisis. People need to pull their heads out of their asses and realize what's going on. The coronavirus is just something that pricks the bubble. We have a corporate debt bubble from them buying back their own stocks. The CEOs made a killing off of it. Now they're all leaving. Now what's going to happen? I think we're headed to a recession. Depending on how bad this coronavirus is going to be, it could lead to a depression. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. It could lead to a depression. We have so much debt. We have so much, record numbers of debt, credit card debt, debt from other countries that they're not going to be able to pay when the time comes due. The next 10 years are going to be extremely interesting. And I'm not trying to fearmonger, guys. I'm just telling you what I see. When I see an exodus of CEOs, I see markets that need trillions of dollars to be propped up so that they go in the other direction. Like, oil prices are down in the dumps. This is not good stuff. You don't want to see this. This isn't directly because of the coronavirus. It may have been the domino that started it, but the underlying economy, the underlying financial markets are hurting right now badly. And I just think people need to keep that in mind, and they need to be prepared, and they need to, if you're buying the dip, please be cautious, okay? Please be cautious. This thing is just starting to ravish our economy. People are being quarantined. People are, staying home. Businesses are obviously going to be taking a hit. But we need to be smart about this. You need to understand what's going on. You need to have a plan, because I think the world economy is headed for a bit of a downturn. And look, I'm not trying to, I hope I'm wrong. I hope, I think either way we're going to make it out okay. I just think people need to keep their head on their shoulders. I'm not saying that we need to go in a huge panic. I think we do need to quarantine. I think we need to stay away from each other and contain this virus is number one right now for me. And then let's worry about the financials afterwards. So that's all I got for this one. I think I might do a Bitcast video later, and we can go into the technicals of Bitcoin and everything. But that's all I've got right now, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next video, okay? All right, peace out.